listening to Development Works, produced by Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses. Hello friends, I'm Andrew Wilson.
And I'm Miguel Carlson. This is Development Works, supported by Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses.
And on today's upcast, before doing international development, you should learn about emotional development.
We hear from Alfredo Tinajero, a researcher who looks at how to optimize early childhood development in different countries around the world.
Alfredo Tinajero is a child development research specialist at the Sick Kids Center for Community Mental Health. During the last 30 years, Alfredo has been involved in early childhood development initiatives, most notably at UNICEF, UNESCO, Inter-American Development Bank, and international implementation and impact evaluation of the Learning Through Play program in several countries. He previously worked in collaboration with Dr. Fraser Mustard, co-founder of the McMaster Medical School. In his native country of Ecuador, Alfredo worked as a coordinator and executive director of a large early childhood development initiative financed by the Inter-American Development Bank. Today on the Upcast, Alfredo lets us know what works in international development.
But first, this Upcast is powered by Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses. We're a Canadian charity that sponsors the medical education of high-potential youth in rural Nicaragua. If you want to ensure everyone has access to quality healthcare, first visit doctorsfordoctors.ca.
He also was very interested in the study of Cuba. Cuba of the 90s, Cuba of the early 2000s. Why Cuba has the indicators it has in relation to other countries. For example, I don't know if you know this, but Cuba, if you compare infant mortality, Cuba is doing as well as Canada. And if you compare healthy life expectancy, Cuba is doing as well as the US. And if you compare low birth weight, Cuba is doing as the Scandinavian countries. Now, according to some studies like that were conducted by UNESCO in Latin America and the Caribbean, according to these studies, Cuban children are performing about 2 standard deviations in academic achievement above the median of the region. That means that we can consider Cuban children a different population from Latin America and the Caribbean. I had the opportunity of becoming a very close friend with the Cuban Ministry of Education. And he told me personal stories about Cuba, about how they did it. One story was this. In the 90s, he was so proud that they were accomplishing like 99.99% of the indicator. So they were providing a service to almost everyone in the island, children. So he was so proud, and he went to see Fidel, the president. He said, you know what? We are almost there, 99.999999. And Fidel's answer was, and what's the name of the 0.00001? Get the name and go to their homes and make it 100. So this is an idea of the effort the Cubans in the 90s were doing to give a complete universal ECD services in different areas. One of the Cubans' contributions was that they move away from pre-established paradigms in how we do things in child development. If you picture, for example, a pediatrician here, okay, in Canada, in other countries in the world, who is a pediatrician? A pediatrician is he or she in an office during summer with the air conditioning, is waiting his secretary outside, waiting for somebody to call to make an appointment. And when somebody comes, this person has some kind of illness or condition and wants to be treated, cured. This is the prototype of a medical doctor in many parts of the world, okay? In Cuba, this is not the case. It's the opposite. So for them, a medical doctor is somebody who is outdoors. because the medical doctor has to be very much in contact with the population. Yes, okay, when see a patient is going to be indoors, but the work is mostly outdoors, okay? Any issue outside, levels of stress, garbage outside, mosquitoes, whatever issue is happening. So this is one difference between the two models. The second difference is that in our paradigm, that the clients usually go with a medical condition. And in Cuba, this is not the case. The case in Cuba is prevention. So before you have the condition, I want to prevent it, okay, and try to avoid it. Another big difference, this is huge, perhaps this is for me what makes Cuban model the Cuban model, is when a client goes to see a doctor here, and suppose the client doesn't come back, and the doctor says, well, didn't come back, it's not my responsibility. Not in Cuba. In Cuba, doctors are family doctors who are in charge of a certain part of members of the population, of the neighborhoods especially, okay? So they know them, and they are professionally, okay, in charge of developmental health in these patients. They are responsible. That means that, for example, if a mother with a malnourished child goes to the office and the mother doesn't come back, okay? So the doctor has the responsibility of looking after what happened, okay? If necessary, go home, okay, knock the door and say, we have a problem. Why is that you never came back? Okay, so it's a personal responsibility for the clients. Okay, so you see, we have some differences in the model. Another difference is that in Cuba, and this is a beautiful one, okay? And this is a beautiful one that can help in the international work. In Cuba, health and education professionals work together. So they don't work in silos. As an example, when the Cuban early education programs was launched in the 90s and became universal, that means 100% of the children became universal for the age 0 to 6. During this period, what happened is that the health professionals coming from the health sector, I'm talking about nurses, talking about doctors and any other health professional. So when I check the records of who worked, okay, what were the professionals involved in the early childhood education program in Cuba, I found that 70% came from the health sector. Okay? That means that a mother with a child goes to see a doctor, and the doctor at that point, okay, can give some kind of medical care, but at the same time, okay, is going to take, so it's going to ask about motor development in the child, language development in the child, okay, personal development in the child, social development in the child. So for the doctor and the medical doctor, he doesn't work in a silo only. No, I only work for medicine and treatment. No, it's general development. So this is the overall lesson we learned, is that it's always best not to work in silos. It's always best to work in collaboration with integrating health and education and integrating different organizations.
I, for one, did not know that stuff about Cuba in the 90s and early 2000s, Mike. I'm impressed that they were able to do that much without spending a ton of money on healthcare. The elbow grease of doctors working in the community really pays off, I suppose. I also like the idea of responsibility shifting to the doctors to ensure the population gets better. This is a huge lesson for working in healthcare and international development, I think.
Yeah, but I think there's some complicating factors here. Like in Canada, we actually pay our doctors 200 times more And we actually looked this up online because we didn't want to be idiots. So in Canada, we pay $20,000 a month for a doctor, and down there, they pay $100 a month. So that level of specialization and cash would make it hard for Dr. Such and Such to visit a patient in her home and take that time in Canada. Now, we've built a completely different system, it looks like, with more specialization and therefore more economic incentives to be efficient. But nevertheless, it's really impressive. The thing I really loved in there, though, was the idea of general development. Now, this idea that the interconnected nature of health and education and family and home are just so important.
Yeah, and I know this as a healthcare professional too. I feel all the time when a patient comes in and there's so many issues that fall way outside of my scope and my ability to help someone. It's overwhelming. And I wish I could sit in on things like parent-teacher interviews and explain why the kid is so restless all the time. Or I wish I could learn from their parents, teachers, or other doctors what else influences that kid to show the symptoms that they have.
I can't even imagine that. Like, you go in and sit on a parent-teacher interview, and the teacher's like, hey, who is this with you? Is that a friend of the family, or is that your son's father? And then, no, you reply, I'm the chiropractor.
Oh man, that'd be ridiculous. Let's do it. In this next clip, Alfredo digs into some serious data that could change the focus of international development and even healthcare for many organizations and governments.
So I'm going to talk about many countries in the world, on the experiences I have with an international program I participate in. The Learning to Play program is a resource, pictorial, low cost, 10 sessions, semi-structured, intended for low literacy parents. So what we do with this resource is we take it to different countries, we provide it and we deliver this in 10 sessions, and parents participate, and we discuss during these sessions about topics such as physical development in the child, nutrition. We talk about the social-emotional development, communication in the child, and intelligence in the child, and so on, okay? So 10 sessions. And it has been in over 25 countries in the world. I found something incredible, amazing, a gold mine. And the gold mine was that focus groups were run, facilitated at the end of the programs. And information was collected from the parents on different questions, different open-ended questions. So the gold mine I found was this piece of information, multicultural, coming from so many countries, that I can believe, okay? This, at that time, was being used, this information, just to present reports to the donors, because, this is a gold mine. We asked the following questions to the caregivers at the very end of the sessions. What did you learn? What are you doing differently? And what are your children doing differently? So, these are open-ended questions, and we have incredible answers coming from the caregivers, from the participants. Some of the answers, and let's go now to the feedback provided by the caregivers. And keep in mind, these are focus groups in Africa, Philippines, these are focus groups in Myanmar, in Pakistan, in many countries in Latin America. So I said about 25 countries. So the feedback is that parents are, they have like an aha moment from participating in the program. It's like discovering something. We were not expecting this. We were expecting that they say, okay, I learned new knowledge. No. They have an aha moment. So they are like shocked of what they learned. They are shocked by saying, I didn't know play is important. So basic things like this. I didn't know play is important. I didn't know that attachment is important. So I didn't know that it's possible for a parent to have fun with a child. So we learned from the data is that the answers are very deep, very powerful, and they are not related necessarily to knowledge. It's more related to a kind of practice and how they see the world and how they relate to their children. And something very important is that about 50% of the answers were related to something very socio-emotional in nature. Certain related, for example, to attachment formation, to love, to affection, to how mothers felt, to mother's well-being, to the child's socio-emotional well-being. You see? And this is a very, very important discovery because we didn't go there. Usually programs don't go there with these in mind.
So I'm not a research guy, and in fact, in Doctors for Doctors, we have a whole team of people for that in particular. But I don't hang out with them often. But I'm pretty sure that research is generally hard, right? Or else everyone would just do it.
I think it's difficult.
Yeah. So not easy, not a third grade class. So first of all, creating a thing that does some good, like a 10-step program, can be tricky. And then trying to research it and prove that it's good is even harder. But somehow, in this clip and in life, Alfredo worked on this project, a 10-session program, that was basically proven, I don't know how he put it, but like to blow people's minds.
It is literally blowing people's minds. Looking at this data from all around the world, I think it's a unique opportunity. And I wonder how much funding actually went into that research. It must have been a pile of data to sift through.
It would be crazy.
And somehow Alfredo picked out the idea that the soft stuff mattered. That people talked about emotions and social impact about half of the time when they talked about value of a program. Think of all the research that doesn't even look into these emotional aspects of why programs internationally are successful. And measuring love generated from a program? Mike, I can't even do that in my own relationships.
Oh!
But
well done. Nice joke. There's also a beauty to the idea that he mentioned of parents realizing they can have fun with their kids. What a cool idea. But in my world, I'm super different. Like, I would just have kids for pure entertainment value.
Really? I mean, I would just have them so that they could work hard and edit and produce this podcast for us.
Yeah, like I'd have 6 kids so they could be a hockey team, and then maybe you could borrow them to help edit the podcast, like a hockey team podcast editing crew.
Yeah, this podcast is produced in Canada, just so everyone knows.
Obvious,
in this
eh?
next heartwarming clip from our friend Alfredo, it ties together a whole lot of the talk. We hear about a box filled to the brim with a lot of feelings.
We are lacking the socio-emotional piece. It's a very powerful indicator that is missing. The socio-emotional. Okay, I'm talking. Yeah, there are measures here. Yes, to measure socio-emotional. Yes, of course. Here in Canada we have, but to be used in developing countries, no. Okay, they need a professional. They need a purpose to be applied. I mean, if you use the measure, what you do with the data in terms of you find something that the child has a need, what you do. So we are lacking these tools, internationally speaking, tools that deal with the soft, with the touch, with the spirit, with love, with affection, with attachment, with maternal socio-emotional well-being, with maternal depression, with child socio-emotional well-being. Okay? Again, love, affection, attachment. We are lacking that, okay? So that was my report to when I was commissioned by UNESCO. I said we are lacking that. And because governments can do nothing about that. We are not at this point yet to have a tool of this kind. What was decided in the report, you can read it, is they said these are the indicators: nutrition, health, income, poverty, and they put a little box. But also, it's important to take into consideration what cannot be measured, which is love and other indicators.
Just lovely. Boxes in reports to proclaim, yes, there is in fact more to humanity than meets the eye.
And I think this is just how researchers would talk about love, isn't it?
It totally is.
Just putting it into a box at the end of whatever else they want to say. It's a good start, I guess.
I guess it's a good start. Still seems too feely, though. I don't know. I would have expected researchers to do like a double negative as a toss away at the end and a conclusion. And finally, in this report, we also found that people did not have an absence of human qualities. But good for researchers for acknowledging the things that governments can't do and that we can't see.
Yeah, and I think, okay, so all joking aside,
Yeah.
this is a big lesson for all of us, because this means that we all need to step up our love game. Both in how we deliver a program on the ground, but also how we measure it. And I know that organizations design programs around research points that they want to prove, but maybe if researchers measured these human qualities, I think it would be a lot harder for organizations and programs to screw it up overseas.
It's well said. Love game.
Step up the love game. Yeah.
Step up the love game. We'll get you a shirt. Andrew, wasn't that a thought-provoking talk?
I mean, you can't learn that in a textbook.
Oh, you can't learn that in a textbook.
Alfredo, it was great to have you come down and speak with us about international development. But don't take my word for it. Here's Gabby, the president of our University of Toronto Student Club, in a segment we are calling Gabby's 2 Cents.
On behalf of the DFD Student Club, I would like to thank Alfredo for his amazing talk. He definitely brought a new perspective to international development that we had not previously encountered. His unique experiences in early childhood development research, particularly on the importance of affection, and his evaluation of the Learning Through Play program was extremely intriguing. Overall, Alfredo's expertise in this area has resulted in one of the most enlightening talks we have had. Thank you again, Alfredo.
For all our listeners, if you want to hear everything that Alfredo or any of our other speakers at Development Works say unedited, you can always come to our live recordings at the University of Toronto downtown campus. Check out our website, doctorsfordoctors.ca, to find all the event details. Our Canadian charity strives to do the best international development work possible, and as we continue to learn, we're sharing all of our learnings with you.
And we would love to hear from you too, so drop us a line on our website if you want to volunteer or get involved.
And now, updates for the month.
In Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses this month, with our students back in school for the year, we are continuing to work with our local partners to figure out the smaller details around our students' school schedules. Also, our medical student Kimberly is taking a keen interest in researching with one of our volunteers, Luz, from the University of Toronto, to answer some important questions in rural Nicaragua. More on this as it develops.
And on our Canadian side, we paid for our students this month after signing our partnership agreement with our local partners. We're also connecting to more Nicaraguans around the GTA and have an exciting advisor network growing. And finally, our nursing team is getting itself together to go down to Nicaragua in July to research better ways to support the Nicaraguan nursing community. So if you know any nurses that are interested in international development, get them to drop us a line.
That's great. And, well, that does it for this month's update on Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses. Let's hand it back to Alfredo for the last word.
If you ask me to measure, instantly, a developmental trajectory in a child, and a newborn child, I would say I would see how mother and child look at each other in their faces, the exchange they have. You see? So, because this is going to have an effect on the stress pathway, this is going to have an effect on everything in life, in the cortisol levels. So this is one of the starting point of the developmental trajectory.
And that's everything for this month's episode of Development Works. Remember to subscribe to our podcast to stay current on international development. Thanks for listening.
This is Andrew and Mike signing off, and remember, if you don't make mistakes, you're not working on hard enough problems.